Well, we all thought it was going to happen. We just weren't exactly sure when. But Aaron Rodgers has changed colors again. He is a Pittsburgh Steeler, signing today with the Pittsburgh Steelers, or at least about to sign today and make it official. Let's see how the Pittsburgh Steelers are faring in the betting market with the addition of Aaron Rodgers, which, frankly, was probably anticipated by the books here. But over under 8.5 wins, plus 125 to the over. Make miss playoffs, making it plus 145. Missing the playoffs, minus 200. Winning the AFC North, plus 550. AFC Championship, plus 2,300. And winning the Super Bowl, plus 4,500. Let's break it all down. Let's bring in Larry Hartstein and Zach Simony and talk about some of those figures we saw on the screen. I got to tell you guys, we're 91 days away from NFL kickoff, but it's always NFL season, so I'm so happy to be talking NFL with you two. Zach, I'm going to start with you. You saw that win total. It was 8.5, and frankly, I'm a little surprised that we're seeing plus 125 at FanDuel. I thought it would be maybe closer to plus 105, plus 110. With that said, do you like the over or do you like the under?
Well, the way Aaron Rodgers played last year, I could see why it is plus money. But I'm trusting the organization more so in the Pittsburgh Steelers to go over the 8.5 wins plus the 125. This is the organization that's made the most out of their quarterback's limitations over the last 4 seasons. We've seen a different combination. Ben Roethlisberger in his final season, they had a 4-game win streak that year. Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, that year they won 6 out of 7 games to close out the season. Even the combination of Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, they won the final 3 games of the year to get into the playoffs. And then, of course, last year with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, a 5-game win streak with Russell Wilson under center. So you're going to have some stability, I believe, with Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to have that quarterback shuffling going around. And it's a team that can win playing ugly, is what we've seen from this Pittsburgh Steelers team. So I like plugging in Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I'll go over the 8.5 wins for the Steelers.
All right, Larry, your thoughts here. Again, I think the plus 125, even plus 120, plus 115, I think that's a decent price. What say you?
I say the streak is ending this year. Finally, you know, Mike Tomlin has gone nearly 2 decades without having a losing season. But I think this is the year, given they have the 9th toughest strength of schedule based on their opponent's win total, given how lucky they were last year. They gained the 2nd most EPA from turnovers last year. And then reality set in at the end as they lost 5 straight. And Aaron Rodgers is not Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he was bad last year. He was bad in 2022 with the Packers, his last full season with the Packers. You know, last year his completion percentage above expectation was minus 5%, which is Anthony Richardson territory. And he had Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. And now who does he have? He has DK Metcalf, who basically is a solid, maybe a slight upgrade over George Pickens. But then you look at Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, this is average talent surrounding him. And the last point I want to make is I don't like the matchup with Arthur Smith. You know, Arthur Smith wants to have you under center, running the ball, and play action passing. Aaron Rodgers wants to be in the shotgun. So let's see how those two work it out. I don't see them getting to 9 wins.
Interesting with that Arthur Smith-oriented running game, drafting Caleb Johnson as well with Jaylen Warren. I think that'll be interesting with that dynamic. The one pushback I'll give you, Larry, is when you look at the schedule, the first 5 games, I'm looking at it now, Jets, Seahawks, Patriots, Vikings, Browns, as bye week, and then Browns. I'm not saying those teams are horrible, okay? But, you know, you're at the Jets with Justin Fields. The Seahawks have questions, in my opinion. The Patriots still have questions, even though they're kind of a hot team. Vikings have questions at the quarterback position. Then you get the Browns. If you get some momentum early, the back half of that schedule is pretty terrible. But if you get some momentum early, maybe this team can kind of have a similar season like they did last year. But when we talk about odds to win the division, I think that's a much different story, okay? We saw it on the graphic. It's plus 550 to win the division. You got Baltimore, you got Cincinnati, and then, of course, you got the Browns. Larry, I can't imagine you're sprinkling on this plus 550, are you?
No, I don't see any value there. It's interesting, even though this move was expected, we've seen the odds shorten a bit in the various markets now that it's official and Aaron Rodgers is coming to Pittsburgh. But, I mean, to me, the Ravens are a juggernaut. The Bengals, with the draft they had, I think their defense should be better, you know, maybe like 20th in the league instead of 27th. And given that, their offense is going to be just as lethal, if not more explosive, I think one of those two teams are taking down the division.
Zach, I kind of think the Ravens go to the Super Bowl this year. That's probably going to be my AFC pick. Haven't committed to it yet, but I don't see a scenario where the Steelers beat out both the Bengals and the Ravens for the AFC North crown.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, as well as with Larry. It would be no value on Pittsburgh to win the division. I think last year they were in the plus 700 range. So getting lower odds right now, do not like that. We touched on Baltimore being the odds-on favorite in the AFC. Cincinnati, they kept both their wide receivers happy in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins by giving them deals. But we have seen the AFC North be the most competitive in terms of having 3 teams have success. The last 3 years, it has had 3 teams have 9 wins or more. So I believe with Rodgers, Pittsburgh can stay in that window, which is why I like their over 8.5 wins, but they're not going to be in the category of Baltimore or Cincinnati this year.
The other question, of course, is odds to make or miss the playoffs, which I think at least is a reasonable conversation, right? But we saw the make prop was, or excuse me, the make number was plus 145. I believe the miss was in that minus 210 territory. Zach, I'm going to start with you. Anything you'd even want to bet here, but even betting aside, I'm just curious, do you think the Steelers team can sneak into a 7 spot, for example?
I do. That's what we've seen from this Pittsburgh team since the NFL expanded the seeding. 2 out of the last 4 years, they've been in that 7th seed spot. And Aaron Rodgers, he goes from an organization that was in complete turmoil in the New York Jets to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season in his 18 years. And we always say when a player comes off a major injury, it takes a full year to recover. I like what I saw in the final month from Aaron Rodgers. He had one of his 300-yard games in the final month, 339 yards against the Miami Dolphins, picked up a couple of wins, and I think he had maybe the best deep ball of the season, an absolute dime to Devontae Adams, a 71-yard touchdown against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm not saying they're going to have a crazy successful year, but I think getting 9, possibly 10 wins and getting that 7th seed to get to the playoffs is worth a plus money play.
So a 2-part question here, Larry. Would you take either side of this bet? And do you think, regardless of whether you want to take the bet or not, do you think the Steelers can sneak into a spot here? Because honestly, I understand what you said about their schedule, especially the back half and them coming to reality last year. But I think there's some AFC teams that could backtrack as well. Your thoughts?
I think the AFC is kind of loaded. When you look at the West, with the Raiders are going to be better. They have competent QB, competent coach. Of course, the Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs in that division. You got the Texans, you got the Ravens, you got the Bengals. So I think the AFC is pretty loaded. And I think, yeah, Mike Tomlin is the picture of stability. And, you know, maybe they hold it together and are competitive, you know, around 500. But I think at some point it's going to unravel. You know, DK Metcalf, he's not a very precise route runner. They'll hit a few deep balls, but I can already see the sideline exchanges between him and Aaron Rodgers, the facial expressions, and the discussions between him and Arthur Smith. He's going to be 42 in December. It's not the same Aaron Rodgers.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the analysis there. Much more NFL analysis to come on primetime pre-games. But I'll tell you what, let's take a look before. Thank you both. Let's take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers Vegas outlook one more time. It seemed like, at least if you include me, we had some consensus on the over 8.5 wins at a decent plus number. Otherwise, I think we're thinking, well, AFC North, AFC Champs, Super Bowl, those are out of the question. But making the playoffs, Zach Simony did talk about that plus 145 number, maybe some value there. All right, Aaron Rodgers, him making the NFL more exciting, that's minus 500.